Hey everybody. What you see in front of you now is the TipsyBrew, the first version of it, and or as some in the community have deemed it, the IKEA version. I want to do a quick run through and make myself some coffee this morning, but wanted to get it on video, which is why we are in the illustrious Tipsy Garage, which is extremely messy. You can even see other projects in the background. I think this is the best angle I can really get for you. But what we have here is the main unit, and then also I'm using this, I think it's a Hamilton Beach. I tried to go with like, I actually bought this specifically for using the TipsyBrew because I was using another kettle, and I kind of got some negative feedback on me constantly taking the other kettle. So I've got this Hamilton Beach one. It seemed like it was incredibly common, and so I went with that because I did make a little on-off thing down here. It's a little servo connected to this arm. And I'll show you how that works in just a second. I'm not going to so much go through a run through of the components, but I will show you this very messy side over here. This is, if I can get it, it was a little difficult to do. I'm on the new kind of gantry arm that I made for making top-down videos, but obviously this is not really a top-down video. Like I said, I don't want to run through the components too much, but we've got a motor driver back here. We've got a pump for the water, an Arduino Mega, 2560, 12 volt to 5 volt step down. This is just a power bar basically, and there's a weight sensor, 1 kilograms worth of a weight sensor. So the way I have it set up right now is when I usually brew, it's on a bar, obviously not this room. So I have that set up so that I ask the I asked the Google Mini. That's not going to set it off. I ask to turn on TipsyBrew, and then what that actually does is it just powers up the power supply. So I have the power supply cable here. I'm just going to simulate that by just plugging it in right now, and you will see what happens. Assuming I didn't break anything when I moved it over here. So we can see TipsyBrew startup screen with the logo, and yeah, I did break something on the way over here because this didn't turn it on. So let me give that one more try. Make sure that that's firmly planted on there. All right, so what's supposed to happen is, so now you'll see this move, the little arm down here. Yeah, I think when I moved it, this part is actually stuck onto the base using, so if you can rotate it, you can see a little bit more. This is just stuck on with double-sided sticky tape. That's not a good enough mounting point. As you can see, there's some wobble to it. It works daily for me, but I think when I just moved it out to the garage, it kind of, borked it a little bit. But we will move on. So the blue light obviously means that it's going to try to come up to heat. That's going to take a while. I'm going to see if I can do this without fast forwarding at all. But while that comes up to temp, let's talk about the actual brewer here, which is, it's a V60, Hario V60 size 2. This was just the kit that I bought. And so as you can see, I already wet the filter. We don't actually have to wet the filter because we can do that in TipsyBrew. I just figured for the demonstration purposes, because this is going to be coming up to heat for a little bit now, I figured for the demonstration I might as well pre-wet the filter. But what we can do is, so now we're on a startup screen that says place a prepared brewer in the machine without any grounds. So that's what I just did. I just put this It's the wet filter. You don't have to wet the filter. You can just do it with a dry filter if you so choose. But this is the setup that you would start with. And the reason being is it takes the weight of this, and then it takes the weight of when you add the grounds, which these grounds are delicious. They're from Borealis Coffee Roasters, and it is their fall bourbon barrel aged beans. There's more details about that on one of the Twitter posts on TipsyBrew's feed. Yeah, so you need to put this in empty and then the beans so that TipsyBrew has the weight of the beans. There's one feature that I put in that's kind of a hidden feature, but it's not meant to be hidden. It's just that I put it in real quick just to try it out. And I'm going to give it a test now. If we hit up, it then says, okay, press down to rinse the filter. This is what I was talking about, where you don't have to pre-rinse it if you really don't want to. So if I press down, there was air in the line because I moved it, but it's dispensing water. And I don't really need to dispense the water, so, and then when complete on rinsing, because you would normally run that like, maybe 2 or 3 times just until the filter got completely wet. Hit the left button. Oh, and also, so I discussed this in at least the Discord forum, where yes, I have a lot of buttons here. The reason being is, so I've got all these wires going over to, and this was, an experimental 3D printed PCB, which was pretty cool. Worked a lot better than I thought it was going to. I'm gonna hit up here because that hidden feature doesn't scale. It doesn't tear the scale. So it says press up to tear. So now it's demanding that I feed it dead beans. Getting back to the mini buttons. So when putting these lines over, I've got, 4 for the OLED screen, and then I needed, I think I wanted this, directional, but when you actually set up the grid for the buttons, it was, going to be, for 5 buttons, it was going to be 2 by 3 or a line for each button. It doesn't matter at that point. And so then I figured, well, I might as well just put the 6 buttons. Once I figure out how I want to use the buttons, then I can start eliminating them on future versions. So if you see this and you're like, this is way too many buttons. Yes, it is. It is way too many buttons. I agree. But you have to start somewhere to figure out exactly what you need, and I'd rather have too many buttons than not enough. Alright, so you can probably hear the water is going here. Not quite up to temperature yet, and I am going to add some temperature, a thermometer, but it's not on there yet. So we're good to start loading beans though, because it's demanding that I feed it dead beans. What I usually do, so another thing was putting the panel up here was probably a bad choice. I'll go over some of the things that I don't really like about version 1. That might help you understand why I change it in future versions. So it's asking to feed it dead beans. Oh yeah, just throw that in there. People who have made good choices in their lives might recognize this container. This is from the Compresso Infinity, an excellent budget grinder. I just gave it a little shake just to kind of level it out. Drop that back in there, and so now you can see it's telling us there's 25.7 grams of dead beans, coffee beans. And then the predicted water usage is 411.5 milliliters, and the end coffee made, which is really just approximate, it uses a ratio, is 360.2 milliliters. Our options here is up to scale, which we don't want to do, the coffee now button to brew, which some of you are going to be infuriated, but coffee now doesn't actually brew the coffee yet, because then it has a check screen saying you're about to make 360.4 milliliters of coffee. Are you sure? Select, which is the middle one, to continue. Any key to cancel. Cancel just goes back to the previous screen. The reason why I did that is, this carafe is only so big. I just wanted to have like a double check. Without actually, I should just put the value of the max line in there, but I didn't. I'll get to that eventually. The software right now needs some work. However, this is my daily brewer, so I haven't really done too much of that right now. Behind here, while that keeps getting up to temp, behind here is, like I said, the motor driver, the pump. So the motor driver drives the pump. The pump is a 12-volt diaphragm pump. Oh, we're just about ready to brew. Let's start the brew here. So we will hit select. Yeah, it should be warm enough. Okay, so bloom is in process. Don't touch the brewer. The bloom could use a little bit of improvements, but it actually soaks the grounds quite well. Sometimes I'll just kind of, at this point, it does say do not touch the brewer, violating my own rules, because sometimes I do give it a little bit of a stir. But that was pretty good. So I'm not going to touch it at all. It gives it 30 seconds. That's hard coded, but I think it's in like a settings file so that you can change it if you really felt the need. What it's going to go through next is, I think I have it set to 225 milliliters would be dispensed at a time. It's around 225 or 250. That was, I kind of got to those values as a experiment, because as I was going, I've posted a couple of pictures on the Twitter feed where the water level inside the cone is like at the very top. I've never had an overflow of the cone, thankfully. Hopefully today on video is not the time that it does overflow. But as you can see, so the water spout is moving around. It does get a little jerky in the front, and the reason for that, there's quite a few reasons for that, but version 2 should hopefully fix that. Okay, so now it's doing a drawdown cycle because it did that max, and I like to just give it a little stir. It's not absolutely necessary. I don't always. This is kind of a James Hoffman thing to give it a stir. I might like give it a little rotate here too. It's kind of a James Hoffman thing to, pour and then stir. So it's doing the last round right now. So it's gonna get to the 411.7 grams of water dispensed on this one. And of course it's getting that because there's the weight sensor under here, under the carafe. It's a very straightforward process. But so the spout is actually moving. Oh, we're done. So now I would just let it draw down on its own. But that's it. That's the complete brew. Behind here, the spout that comes down here, underneath this back plate, there's an arm on 2 servos. One servo rotates, and then the other one does back and forth. And so that's how it's drawing the pour pattern there in dispensing the water. But that is it. We've got a halfway decent flat bed there. Got a little bit of ground stuck up on the sides, but overall, pretty good brew. And when I'm talking, it happened pretty quick. It took longer to boil the water than anything else. But that is the straight through run through of TipsyBrew. So I hope you enjoyed. It really does exist, and I promise that I'll try to make a better video in the future. But for now, I think this is pretty good. All right. Well, have a good day, guys.